Starter kits help to get onboarded to new software development projects and speed up the development process. For Content Hub ONE, we are offering already a variety of starter kits. Those contain already all implementations to connect your application with Content Hub ONE, as well as handling different field types. They also contain examples on how to utilize the Content Hub ONE APIs, SDK and CLI. In this video, we install the Content Hub ONE NextJS Starter Kit and start implementing a new events page. To speed up the development of apps using Content Hub ONE, we are offering a couple of starter kits with simple examples. There are examples for Astro, NextJS, Svelte and Vue already. In this tutorial, we are following the recipe example starter kit using NextJS. Checking the README, we have a step-by-step instruction how to install the starter kit. For this starter kit, you need to have access to a Content Hub ONE tenant. I do have access using the Sitecore Cloud Portal. Also, you need to have Node.js installed as well as the Content Hub ONE CLI and the Git CLI. If you need help on the Content Hub ONE CLI installation, check out the documentation or my video about the Content Hub ONE CLI. If you are unsure whether you have the CLI installed already, go to your command prompt and run ch1 CLI -version. I have all that installed already. So first I fork the repo to my personal GitHub repository. That can also be your company repository. I change the repo name to my ch1 app and run the fork process that creates a copy in my personal repo. Now I clone the repository to my disk using the git CLI command that I can copy from GitHub. I paste it in the command prompt and run it. Once this is done, I can open the solution in Visual Studio Code. To install all required npm packages, I run npm install in the repository folder. In order to set up the connection to the Content Hub ONE tenant and the serialization of the content items and content types as well as media files, I need to create a .env file to set up the required environment variables. Therefore, I copy the .env.example and name it .env. I have to provide the client ID and client secret, which I get from the Content Hub ONE app. This is required to connect to the content management and media upload API, which I use in the setup.js script that takes care about installing the media assets. We'll come to that later. Next, I have to provide the auth token. Therefore, I generate an API key either through the CLI or through the app. I'm creating an API key for the preview API. Give it a name and store it in the .env file. Please note that this is the only time the API key is shown to you. Last but not least, I also have to provide the endpoint URL, which depends on whether you want to connect to the preview API or the delivery API of Content Hub ONE. For development purposes, I usually connect to the preview API. This does not require publishing, but I also have to keep in mind that the app might show different content using the delivery API. The starter kit uses images, content types and content items. To install those to your Content Hub ONE tenant, you can use the setup script that comes with the starter kit. The setup script uses the media upload API as well as the Content Hub ONE SDKs and the CLI to create the required resources. Also, the script provides some examples on how to utilize the different tools that improve the developer experience a lot. Let's run the setup script. The script is uploading the media assets one by one by creating an upload link, uploading the asset, create the according media item and complete the upload. Next, it uses the CLI to push the serialized content types as well as the content items. In Content Hub ONE, I can confirm that the media items as well as the content items have been created in draft state. Now I want to publish all related items. Therefore, I use the publish script. Please note that the publishing via the SDK or the Content API just triggers the start of the publishing. It might take a moment after the script finishes until the items are actually marked as published and available on the Delivery API. By the way, if you want to get rid of the Starter Kit items, you can just unpublish them using the unpublish script and delete the items using the remove script. Please note that also the unpublish might take a moment longer after the script has finished. All scripts can be rerun from any state. To start the application, we can run npm run dev. I usually do that in a separate terminal window. In the browser, we can call localhost 3000 and see the results of the app. We got the home page that shows 3 selected recipes. If I click on the Read More button, I land on the recipe detail page. Okay, now we have it running, but it claims to be a starter kit, so how can we actually get started? First, we need to understand the requirements, model the content accordingly, maintain the content, and build out the app. Let's say we want to build an event page. We need to create the content types, so first we model the event. The event has an event name as a short text and we make that required. We also need an event description as a rich text to be able to format the text. The event location as a long text to provide address information. The event date as a date. An agenda field that references the agenda content items, and an event image as a media field. Okay, so we said we are referencing agenda items, so we need to model them. We call the content type talk. We need a talk title as a short text and mandatory. A talk description as a long text. The time slot on the agenda as a short text. The duration of the talk in minutes as a short text. And a talk can be held by one or more speakers, so we reference content items in the speaker field. By saying that, we also need to model a speaker type, giving a name of the speaker as a short text, the speaker bio as a long text to provide some information about the speaker, and the speaker image as a media field. Next, let's put in some meaningful content. First, we upload the images that we want to use, starting with the speakers. Speaker 1, Speaker 2, and Speaker 3. Next, we upload the event image. To create the contents, it's more efficient to start with content types that do not reference any other content type. So we create the speakers first. We start with Georgie Estes, provide the speaker bio, and select the image we just uploaded. Now we create the speaker content for Skylar Hess. Again, provide the speaker bio and select an image. Last but not least, we create the speaker content for Jasmine Graham with the speaker bio and an image. Next in line is the talk. So we create our first talk about Sitecore Content Hub ONE starter kits. Provide the talk title, a talk description, the time when the talk starts, the duration, for example 30 minutes, and we assign one of the previously created speakers. Let's create another talk, for example, a Sitecore Send introduction with a title, a description, the time when the talk starts, and the duration. This time we assign 2 speakers as they share the 45-minute slot. Great! The agenda looks pretty much like a Sitecore user group. So let's create the event. Has there been a user group in Hawaii? Now there is, and I'd be more than happy to join, ideally in person. Anyhow, let's put in the event description, the event location, for sure the event date, and starting time. And we assign the 2 talks. Last but not least, we assign the event image. And we're done with the content creation. Okay, so next, in order to use the content in our app, we need to query it. I'm using the Sitecore GraphQL IDE for Content Hub ONE. And I connect the preview endpoint for now, as the content has not been published yet. I've provided the API key and the HTTP header. So I'm using the IntelliSense of the IDE to build out my query. I want to have all events, get the total number and the result set. Starting with the event ID, the name of the content item, the event name, event description, event location, the event date, event image, and event agenda. Let's see the results. Well, we see an error that is telling us that the event image and agenda are objects. Basically lists of objects. So we need to query the results of those. For the event image, I just need to get the results and the fields I need. Let's get the file ID and the file name for now. Now let's check the agenda reference field. We want to see the total number of results and the results. Querying a reference field is not as easy as querying a media field, as the content items referenced can be of different types. I'll just query for the type name for now. Looks like the errors are solved and the type name is talk. So I define that on reference content items of type talk, I want to see the fields ID, item name, talk title, talk description, time, and speaker. Again, as speaker is a reference type, let's get the total number and the type name as results. So no surprise, the speaker references content items of type speaker. So for the speaker, we want to get the ID, the name, speaker bio, and speaker image. With the file ID and the file name again. Looks like the query works. We want to change the starter kit so it fulfills our requirements. We start with implementing the query. Therefore, I navigate into the GraphQL folder. In here I find an example on how the recipes were queried. In there, I define the structure for the recipes as well as a list of recipes using all recipe. I want to query events instead, so I make a copy of the recipe folder and name it events. As I need to query not only events but also speakers and talks, I duplicate the TypeScript file 2 times. I rename the first file to speakerQuery.ts and exchange the name of the constant to speakerQuery and allSpeakerQuery. Now I adjust the fields to the ones I expect from the content type, such as speaker name, speaker bio, and speaker image. I'm reusing the media query that is predefined in the starter kit. The media query contains all fields that a media item contains. Next, I'm creating the agenda query.ts file. I exchanged the field definitions with talk title, talk description, time, and speaker. For the speaker, I'm reusing the speaker query I just wrote. Make sure that the speaker query is correctly imported. Also renaming the constants accordingly. Last but not least, I'm creating the query for the events. Renaming the constants. And querying for the right fields. Event name, event description, location, date, image using the media query, and agenda using the agenda query. Now let's build out the model. Therefore, I navigate into the types folder. In here, I also find a folder called recipe containing the model of the recipe object. I also copy this one and rename it to events. I duplicate the recipe type file twice as I need a model for speakers and agenda as well. Starting with the speaker model, I rename the file and the type and use the properties with its types. Also renaming the speaker results type as an array of speakers. Speaker name and speaker bio as string. For the speaker image, I'm reusing the media results type, which is defined in the starter kit already. Next, I define the agenda object type. And the agenda results as an array of agenda. Actually, it would be better to name the type talk, as this would match the name of the content type in the Content Hub ONE. Now I can define the fields talk title, talk description, time, and speaker, which uses the new speaker type I just created. Now let's define the event object. Again, defining the fields, event name as string, and event description as JSON content. You might have seen when we built the query using the IDE that the rich text field returns all text formatting in a JSON object. This needs to be passed and transformed into HTML. All this has been inbuilt into the starter kit already, so you can just work with a predefined type JSON content. The event location comes as a string, event date as a date, and event image again as media result. The agenda comes as talk results, which we defined before. Rechecking on the talk, I accidentally used the speaker type, but we get a list of speakers, so I need to use speaker results. As you can see, we also have a few imports that we do not need on the talk, so let's clean that up. Checking on the speaker, I can also remove the unused imports. Event looks already fine. Now it's time to bring the query and the types together. Therefore, we navigate into the lib folder. Also here, we find a recipe folder that we can use as orientation. It contains a getAllRecipes function to return a list of recipes and a getRecipeById function to get a single recipe item by its IDs. Both reuse the defined queries and return the data into our objects. Let's copy this folder again, rename it to events, and rename the file to eventlib.ts. In here, we rename the functions to getAllEvents and use the allEvents query. I also rename the getEventById function and adjust the query accordingly using the event query. There is another function called getEventWithIds. I adjust the query as well. Clean up the imports and fix the data types. Looks like we solved all errors. Now that we wired up everything to retrieve the data, let's care about the front end. I want to create a page that displays data about one event. In the Pages folder, I'm making a copy of the home page and call it Events. I'm checking in the browser if this new route can actually be displayed. Looks fine. Now I can start making the changes. I need to get the event data into my events page so I can use the data later to be displayed. Therefore, I set up a constant that contains an event from the getEventById function that I created in the lib folder. I pass the event ID that I got from the SoCaWhy event in Content Hub ONE. In the markup, I can change now the header, first the title, to actually pass the event data from the getStaticProps into my markup, I need to return the event and also define it in the properties as well as import it into my page. Looks like the event type is not correctly imported. So let me add this one taking the event from the types. Now I can access the different properties of my event object. So I can pass the event image file URL into the hero banner, the event name into the h1 tag, and next I want to pass the event description into the paragraph. Now you remember that the description is based on a rich text field in Content Hub ONE, which gets returned as a JSON object. If I take a look into the slug.tsx example, I find that I need to use the generate.html function. I copy this one into my event page, exchange the property, and import the rich text profile as well as the generate.html function. To output the HTML, I can check the slug.tsx example again and see that I use the dangerously set inner HTML function. I use that inside of my div now. When I check the results of my event page, I can see that the correct header image is used based on the event content item, as well as the headline and the description. The next step would be to display more event-related data and create maybe new components.